Hi, I'm Bill Bronchick, and in this video I'd like to share with you 5 little tricks you didn't know that your self-directed IRA can do. Let's get right into it. Number 1, you can co-invest. What that means is there are certain parties that you can't do business with that are called disqualified parties. Those are namely you're the most disqualified party. You can't do business, mean buy from, sell to, borrow from, lend to your IRA. That includes your spouse and his or her IRA, parents, their IRAs, grandparents, kids, their spouses, grandkids, their spouses. So pretty much everyone, yourself, your spouse, and everyone up and down the lineal ascendancy or descendancy are disqualified parties. It doesn't include siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, and totally unrelated parties. So the general rule is with disqualified parties, you can't borrow from or lend to or buy a house from or sell to and so forth. But you can co-invest. So let's use a simple example. Let's say you had an IRA and your IRA wanted to buy stock in Google. Could you individually buy stock in Google too? Could you co-invest in the same company? Of course you could. And the reason is because you're buying separate interests in the same asset or same entity or same investment from a third party who's not disqualified. That means you're buying from on the open market, and neither of you at that point owns 50% or more. So that would be perfectly okay. Now let's take it to a more close to home example. Let's say you wanted to buy a property with your IRA, but you didn't quite have enough money. But your wife's IRA, or your wife had some money, or you individually had some money. Can we co-invest in the same asset? Well, the rule is that as long as this asset that you're buying is a non-disqualified party, an NDP, so it's already owned by someone who's not disqualified, and they're selling it to, let's say, multiple parties. So it could be you, your IRA, and let's say your spouse can all go in together and buy separate interests in the same asset from a non-disqualified party. That'd be fine. So in this case, you would all be what's called tenants in common, TIC, tenants in common, and the deed would read you as to, let's say, 30% ownership, and your IRA as to 40% ownership, and your spouse as to the rest of the ownership as tenants in common. That's perfectly okay. But what you can't do is after the fact say, okay, I'm going to buy it with my money, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get reimbursed some of that money by selling shares to the IRA and spouse who are disqualified parties. That would be a no-no. So general rules with co-investing is you have to go in together, same time, and buy separate interests in the same asset from a non-disqualified party. I know that's a mouthful, but rewind it and listen again. Non-disqualified party selling it, same time, separate interests in the same asset, and you can co-invest together accordingly. So that's the first one. The second one would be to borrow from it. I'm going to put that loosely in quotes. Now, Bill, you just said you can't borrow from your IRA. You're in a disqualified party. That's true. But there is sort of a backdoor little trick around it that you can do a limited borrowing about once a year. And that is, let's say you were going to take your IRA out of Fidelity, your money out of Fidelity. Now, you probably wouldn't have it there anyway if you're watching this video, but just follow the example. So your custodian, Fidelity, has the money. And you said, okay, I'm going to take that money out, and I want to put it in a different custodian, Schwab. So they would give you 60 days to put that same amount back, not the exact money. I mean, it doesn't have to be the same actual trace of money. It just has to be the same amount into your other custodian's account within 60 days. So let's say you take it out. Now, while it's out in your hand, what can you do with it? Well, pretty much anything you want. It's not tax-deferred or tax-free, but the money is in your hands to do a short-term transaction. And then on day 59, you say, you know, I changed my mind, Fidelity, you're not so bad. I'm going to put it back with you and get a new account with you, or put it back if they'll allow you in the same account. Basically, what you've done is borrowed. It's just a free pass you get, and you can only do that once a year. So that's a little trick to borrow where you can't really borrow from an IRA. The last one is how to do backdoor, I should say the third one, backdoor Roth contributions. So if you make too much money, you know, you can't contribute to a Roth in that year if you make too much. Now, How do you get money in a Roth then? Well, you could always make what's called a non-deductible contribution to a traditional IRA. So if you have a traditional IRA, you can make a contribution, but it's not deductible because you make too much. Then what do? Well, every couple of years you make those non-deductible contributions, and then what do? You roll them into the Roth. Does that make sense? So you make non-deductible contributions to a traditional IRA and then roll them every couple of years into the Roth IRA. Sort of a backdoor way. A little complicated, but worth doing if you want to get more money into your Roth IRA. Number 4, your IRA can borrow, of course, from non-disqualified parties. If you're catching on, you would know that anyway. So a lot of people think IRAs can't borrow. That's not true. IRAs can borrow money. So if you don't have enough money to buy a property in your self-directed IRA and you want to borrow for the rest, there's a couple of rules about that. Number 1, it has to be non-recourse loan. That means it must specifically say in the note, in the event of default, the lender's only recourse is to foreclose the property, not to go against either the IRA itself or you individually. So obviously you couldn't give a personal guarantee on a note. Thus, having your IRA put up $50,000 as a down payment and borrowing $150,000 from a bank where it required your personal signature, that's out of the question. So there must be no personal guarantees and no recourse against the IRA. Okay? Now, there are some tax rules you have to be aware of when you do leverage with money. It's called UDFI, Unrelated Debt Financed Income. And I'm not going to go too much into it because you can look it up on the internet or some of my other articles. But basically the rule is to the extent that you leverage, you've got to pay tax on the profits of that portion. So let me give you a simple example. $100,000 property purchase. Your IRA puts up $50,000, you borrow non-recourse money, $50,000. So 50% of the original purchase was done with debt. You fix it up, you sell it a few months later, 50% of the profits would be taxable on your personal return because of the leveraged UDFI debt rule. Okay, and that's all I want to say about it right now. If you have any questions, just drop me an email or you can look at some of the articles about UDFI on my website. Okay, and the last little trick that you may not be aware of, number 5, is you can checkbook control your IRA. That means what you can do is you can form an LLC. Well, actually, you can't form it. Let's just say an LLC can be formed by a non-disqualified party. That's usually an attorney or someone like that. And then you direct your IRA custodian to buy the membership of the newly formed LLC. So this is not much different than the Google stock example. You could tell your custodian, go buy 5 shares of Google stock. Why can't you tell your custodian to buy 100% of the membership in this company that was not owned by you, not formed by you, and is not therefore not disqualified as to you, and it was not formed by a disqualified party, obviously, a clean third-party formation, and then the initial purchase of stock or membership in the company, the initial offering is done to your self-directed IRA, and your self-directed IRA becomes the member of that. And therefore, the money goes from your IRA custodian to the LLC's bank account, just like any offering would work that way. And then once the money is all transacted and everything is in there, then the IRA slash LLC that has been formed can appoint you as the manager, which gives you checkbook control. That's just a summary. If you'd like more information on that, drop me a line, 303-398-7032, or drop me an email, bill@bronchick.com, and I can fill you in on more information on how to checkbook your self-directed IRA. I hope you've enjoyed these 5 interesting things you can do with your self-directed IRA, and make sure, of course, that you get competent tax and legal advice before proceeding with any transaction in your IRA that you're not sure of.